Welcome back. We've got new polls out by the New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, and Siena College, finding former President Trump beating President Biden in 5 key battleground states. That's Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. All states that Biden won in the 2020 election. Trump leads Biden by 12 in Nevada, while Biden holds a slim lead on Trump in Wisconsin. A new Florida Chamber of Commerce survey shows Trump with a 9-point lead on Biden in Florida, after last month when Biden claimed that Florida, quote, is in play. Joining me now is Florida Congressman Carlos Gimenez, a member of the House Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Select Committee on China. Congressman, good to see you. Is Florida in play?
No, it's not in play for Biden. It's certainly in play for President Trump. President Trump's going to win Florida, and he's going to win Florida big in November.
Well, the polls also find former President Trump leading Biden among voters aged 18 to 29. Trump trails Biden only 3 points among Hispanic voters, while he's getting 23% of support from blacks. This is the highest level of black voter support for any GOP presidential candidate since 1964, Congressman. What do you think's behind this increasing support for President Trump?
I think there are a number of things. Number one, more and more Americans are paying attention to the fact that we're going to have a presidential election, and they're answering the question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And they're answering, not only answering no, they're answering hell no. We're not better off, today than we were 4 years ago. They're also seeing the assault on democracy that the Biden administration is placing on former President Trump, and they don't like it. The Biden withholding of arms to Israel, even though his extreme arm of the Democrat Party is pro-Palestinian, the majority of Americans are pro-Israel. And finally, what's happening at the border? I mean, we've been suffering this crisis at the border since the first day of the Biden administration. There's a number of things that Americans are finally waking up to and saying, no, we're not better off, and no, we don't want to take any more of this. And that's why you're seeing more and more support for President Trump.
Really all important points. And Lee Carter, jump in here, because that's exactly the question we should be asking going into this election. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Most people would say, no, my life is much more expensive. There are 2 wars underway. The world is on fire. Economic policy and foreign policy has underwhelmed.
I think it's a really fascinating time, because when you talk to Americans, 56% say we need systemic change on both the political and economic system level, and 70% believe Donald Trump is the one that can do that. And that's across party lines. I think Americans right now are ready for change. They say the system's not working the way it is. They look at the way the political system is set up. They look at the way the judicial system is set up, and they say it's not working. And they look at the economic system, and they say it's just not working for them across the board. And they want to see somebody come in and shake things up. And another thing I think is really fascinating is 13% of people who voted for Biden last time say that they will not vote for him again because of his stance on foreign policy, specifically how he's handling Gaza. He's got a big issue if he doesn't get his voters out there. And I think, we have to remember Donald Trump never led in the polls in 2016 and 2020. He's leading now. He generally outperforms polls between 3 and 5%. And so I think Biden is in much more trouble than any of these polls suggest right now.
Great point. Now, yeah, go ahead, Congressman.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. I mean, President Trump, there's some people who still, have a hard time saying, yes, I will support President Trump, some. And that's probably about 2 to 3 points. And so now the fact that he's actually up in the polls, that's very, very significant. And so, yeah, I think that the president is actually doing better than the polls suggest. And he's going to do better here in Florida than 9 points. I'll tell you that. Florida is red. Florida is going to be for Trump. And hopefully, we can continue this momentum, because we need President Trump in the White House. We see what's happening to us here in America and America around the world, and we need peace in the world. And the only one that can bring that peace to the world, certainly not Joe Biden, it's President Donald Trump.
It's funny to see Joe Biden take a page out of President Trump's playbook on so many things, whether it be, oh, I'm thinking about executive order at the border, or no, I'm thinking about tariffs. President hasn't done anything about any of this in the last 3.5 years, but now 6 months before an election, we hear the Biden administration is expected to announce new tariffs on electric vehicles, solar panels, semiconductors, and medical supplies imported from China. We're expecting that today. Fox Business's White House correspondent Edward Lawrence questioned the White House about this yesterday and why Biden is adding to the tariffs to Chinese goods after previously criticizing President Trump for doing the same. Watch this.
So in July of 2019, then candidate Biden said that tariffs on China are abusive policy. Has the president changed his mind and now believes tariffs work?
We have always had concerns on China's unfair trade policies. We've been very clear about that. And the last administration, when they did a trade deal with China, what it did is it failed to increase American exports or boost manufacturing. That is not something the president wants to see.
So he now believes tariffs work.
I'm just going to be really mindful, not get ahead of what we're about to announce soon.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying it that we're actually going to see any of these tariffs materialize in the first place. But here's President Trump when I first asked him about tariffs back in February of this year. Watch this. Your critics are saying that you're going to start another trade war with China.
It's not a trade war. I did great with China with everything. Look, China came in, they were going to destroy our steel industry, and I put tariffs, big tariffs, 50% to 100%, but 50% for the most part. It stopped it. I have steel people that every time they see me, they start to cry. They hug me. They said, you saved our industry. But now we're letting it go.
Now the Washington Post is saying that you're talking about 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. Is that in the cards?
No, I would say maybe it's going to be more than that because we're going to have, look, I want China to do great. I do. And I like President Xi a lot. He was a very good friend of mine during my term.
Well, look, COVID cover-up, intellectual property theft.
When COVID came,
the list is long
different.
from our number one adversary. So I don't know if he's a friend.
No, but I got along with him great. I'm not sure he loved what I was doing because I was, getting along with him.
I don't think he wants you in the White House, Mr. President.
No, he doesn't.
So, Congressman, what about this tariff fight? So yesterday we hear Biden is planning to raise tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles by 100%. Then President Trump comes out. He says, I'll put a 200% tax on every car that comes in from those plants. What are we dealing with here? And do we worry, or do you worry, that these tariffs will, in fact, create a trade war and actually end up being a negative for this economy?
Maria, I'm a China hawk, and I've been saying it over and over again. China is killing close to 100,000 Americans every single year. They are our greatest existential threat. Every dollar that we send to China is a dollar that's going to be used against us. And so, yeah, we need to decouple from China, and we need to decouple yesterday, not today, not tomorrow. Yesterday, we should have been decoupling from China. And so, listen, one thing. Never listen to what Biden says. Watch what he does. He may talk a great game, but at the end, I doubt that he's going to go through with it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. We are also obviously very clear-eyed about the threat of communist China on this program and voice that every day, Congressman. So I'm just wondering why all of a sudden Joe Biden is getting religion now. Because I'm also questioning whether or not he's actually going to push back on China in a real way. He hasn't done it yet.
Right. Now, again, never listen to what he says. Watch what he does. I mean, he makes great statements, but then there's the fine print underneath that says that all of this is all baloney because over here on the fine print, this has no effect because, again, Joe Biden hasn't made the right decision in 50 years. He's not going to make it now. Everything he does is against American interests.
Well, we saw that same thing with the ironclad statement, right? Ironclad, and then he holds back weapons to Israel. Congressman, thank you. We'll be following all of that and certainly following your work. Carlos Gimenez. Stay with us. We'll be right back.